think there is anyone who wants to interpolate. So I saw Bong Revilla earlier, and I don't think he will no longer. Just the manifestation, we'd like to recognize our minority floor leader. And we'd like to recognize the sponsor, Senator Kingo.
Mr. President, before we recognize the minority leader, can I just make an opening statement, Mr. President?
Please proceed.
Thank you. Magandang araw po sa inyo, Ginoong Pangulo, sa ating mga kasamahan dito sa Senado. For the record, ang kabuuang panukalang budget ng Film Development Council of the Philippines para sa susunod na taon ay 215,483,000 pesos. Ang halagang ito po ay mas mababa sa kanilang budget ngayon 2023. Kasama po natin ngayong araw ang FDCP family sa pangunguna ng kanilang chairperson, ang batikang aktor, ang walang kakupas-kupas, at talagang ang collab team po ni Nora Honor na si Tirso Cruz III. And as a member of the movie and entertainment industry, it is my honor to sponsor and defend the budget of this agency. And we are ready to answer queries from our colleagues, Mr. President.
Just some clarificatory, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor. Is the Film Development Center asking for funding to construct a building?
Yes,
Their office?
yes, Your Honor.
Kargado na po rito sa...
Wala pa po. They are asking for an additional 92 million pesos, Your Honor.
Pending pa po yan, 92, okay, 92
Yes.
million. Okay.
Yes, and for the
Sige po.
information of Your Honor, Senator Robin Padilla has already earmarked 140 million, 150 million last year, Mr. President.
What does that mean? So, for this year's
For this
budget,
year, medyo kulang po.
nakulangan lang po.
Kulang po ng
So alam ko
92
po,
million.
one of the purposes is to have safe storage space for our film archives.
Yes.
Sige.
You are
So,
correct, Mr.
Ang
President.
naisipan namin ni Mr. Sponsor, Idol Pip, is in the meantime, habang kinoconstruct siguro yung ating building, if we can digitize our film archives, para nasa cloud na rin po sila at whatever happens to the physical tapes or films or rolls, and meron na po tayong
Yes, Your Honor.
digitized version.
Before I entered, when you were not yet here, I had discussed it with the chairperson of the FDCP, and he informed me that they already started digitizing the films. I think they have already completed 21% of the films that are stored at the FDCP building.
So you have it's already a program, and then you have the budget for that program na digitization program.
They're asking for a total of 15 million.
1.5.
Yes, 15 million.
Yan, at least so pending pa yan, another pending
Yes.
matter. Huh? But,
Yes, Your Honor.
But nahanapan nyo ng funding kasi naumpisahan ninyo eh. So that means meron kayong nakitaang parang
Siguro.
amount na nagamit ninyo to start the project.
Yes, Mr. President. As a member of the movie industry, maybe we can ask our colleagues who are also members of the movie industry, namely Senators Padilla, Revilla, and Lapid, and also those who are connected with the movie industry, like Senator Grace Poe, Senator Chis Escudero, and maybe Senator Win Gatchalian. Mr. President.
Tama yan. I fully support that.
And of course, my kid brother, Senator JV, maybe he can also help in trying to augment the funds of the FDCP.
As the co-author and sponsor of the Creative Industries Development Bill, I will also be supportive. The film is a part of one of the 9 domains of the creative industry, Mr. President. So we are here to help. So yan lang po. Maraming salamat po sa lahat.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, sir, Minority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, there being no other reservation for interpellation, I move that we close the period of interpellation and consider the budget of the Film Development Council of the Philippines to be deemed submitted for the body's consideration. I so move, Mr. President.
Before we approve the motion, I would just like to also welcome to the Senate distinguished gentleman, si Tirso Cruz III. Pinapanood po kita. Nung bata pa po ako, Noranyan po ako kasi yung kasambahay ko noon, Noranyan eh. So naalala ko si Manang Tina. Yan, nanonood kami palagi ng mga pelikula ninyo. At
Mr.
napakagaling kumanta niyan, si Pip. Si Pip.
Mr. Senate President, may I ask how old were you then?
I'm 54 now. I used to be about 9 or 8 or 9 years old. This was in 70s. 69 ako eh. So, 1969.
I used to
So that
watch
was
his films when I was only 5 years old, Mr. President.
Grabe, no? Yeah, when the 1977, yan, 78, yan talaga sikat na sikat sila noon.
Guy and Pip, ha?
Guy and
Together
Pip,
again.
Together again. Yeah. Gagaling kumanta yung mga yan. So it's nice to see him always. It's always, I don't want to say nostalgic kasi baka masyado matanda pag nostalgic.
Naging karibal din ho niya yung tatay ko.
Oo nga. Tama. So, there being no objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader, the budget of the Film Development Council of the Philippines is hereby deemed submitted. Congratulations, gentlemen, ladies.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. President, I move that we consider the budget of
Mr.
moving.
President, may we have a 1-minute suspension for them to
sure.
vacate the
Sir.
place?
Pwede naman siguro pag wala na magtatanong, Your Honor, baka pwede natin ma-dispense na yung MTRCB.
All right.
Yeah, so, yeah, para walang lal. Sige po, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, again, I move that we consider the budget of the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board and acknowledge the presence of its officials led by Ms. Lala Soto, who is with us, the chair, who is with us this afternoon, and the officials. We now recognize again the distinguished Senator Jigo Estrada to sponsor the same
Thank you.
And there's no interpellation.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good day to our Senate President, our honorable members of the Senate. I am honored to sponsor the budget of the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board. The MTRCB family is present in this august chamber, led by their chairperson, Jurella Maria Lala Soto Antonio. For the record, their proposed expenditure program for fiscal year 2024 is 130,612,000 pesos. 82,793,000 pesos of which, or the entire MOOE, will be sourced from fees and charges levied, assessed, and collected by the agency. Next year's total agency budget is lower compared to their 2023 budget. We are ready to entertain inquiries from our dear colleagues, Mr. President, if there are any.
I believe there are none, no, Majority Leader?
Yes, Mr. President, but the former head of the MTRCB, who's our colleague, would like to have a manifestation. I move
Before I
that she be recognized.
recognize Senator Grace Poe, I would just like to welcome to the Senate her former home, because her father was our Senate President for two Congresses. And after succeeding, of course, the Minority Floor Leader, Senate President Coco Pimentel, no other than Senate President Tito Soto, Tito Sen is fondly called, his daughter, Ma'am Lala Soto. Welcome back to the Senate, and you're always welcome here, ma'am. Our best to your wonderful father. We'd now like to recognize our distinguished colleague, Senator Grace Poe.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to manifest my support to an agency that I believe is still relevant at this point to remind our countrymen, especially the parents, to provide guidance for the children in terms of their viewing habits. I would also like to say that the MTRCB, from the time I was there, has grown by leaps and bounds. I was surprised to know that they have about 600 million already in their sinking fund,
That is correct, Mr. President.
which I'm afraid they're not able to utilize.
To be exact, Mr. President, they have, as of July 2023, they have 616,164,818 pesos.
That's amazing. So the MTRCB is not really a burden to the government. In fact, when I started, our budget, I believe, was less than 30 million. That's how we started. And so maybe
so you
just
think, Senate, Ms. Soto is better than you, and you were chairman?
well, I'm sure she's better in a lot of ways. So I would like to thank her also for her leadership. But I would also like to remind the MTRCB to be firm with the closed caption law. I noticed that a lot of networks haven't fully complied yet. And we're one of the few countries, well, maybe not one of the few, but we're one of the countries that does not give the option for a closed caption, not just for the hearing impaired, even for the elderly to understand. And I know that you've exempted the news, but I think the news is it's actually more important for news outlets or the broadcast news to have closed caption. So anyway, so that's it. I would just like to congratulate in advance and to manifest again my support.
Thank you, my colleague, Senator Grace.
Thank you, Mr. President. Likewise, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, which is seeking the floor, you know.
Yes, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano of the City of Taguig is recognized.
Magandang hapon po, Mr. Senate President, Chairman, and the brother of the Chairman, sa MTRCB family. Isang ano lang, with your permission, Mr. President, may I ask Senator Jingo if I can just
Gladly,
speak
Mr.
about
President.
one concept lang. No? So during the time na TV, radio lang, ang means natin ng mass media, of course, newspapers, parang very clear ang opinion, di ba? Kaya nga may opinion page, the majority opinion, the minority opinion. And then yung influence, of course, ng pelikula at saka ng TV. And of course, that was also a golden age for Philippine movies, di ba? Pagpunta ka ng Malaysia, Thailand, makikita mo talaga yung mga pelikula, whether it's VHS or Betamax or CDs noon, no? So the MTRCB, despite any criticisms, did a good job during those time na pag-aralan yung contemporary cultural values natin. Di ba? So hindi naman todo conservative na pipilitin mo na eto lang ang pwede, na, di ba? Hindi naman umaabot ng censorship, pero hindi naman parang bahala ka na. Bahala ka na, di ba? Na parang anything you show, any kind of language, any kind of action is okay. So the problem is, after digital media and then ngayon sa internet, parang nawalan ng, if I can use the word, control.
Yes.
And of course, others don't want any control kapag ka mass media. And I remember si Senator Joel Villanueva and I, first rally in SM Mega Mall ata tayo, Brad, nun, di ba? Majority Leader. Nag-rally tayo sa Mega Mall because SM announced that they will not be showing our movies anymore. And nag-rally kami, iko-correct ko ha, finifilm tayo ni Brother Senator Robin, nag-rally kami hindi dahil galit kami at gusto namin manood ng R. Lahat po gustong manood ng R, pati X-rated. But naglalaban ang spirit mo at saka ang laman mo. So nag-rally kami to support SM na hindi pala totoo na kailangan parating violence at parating sex para kumita, di ba? The irony during that time is that I remember bago yung mga video ng sex videos ng mga Biba Hot Babe. Ang mahirap nun, pag nag-speech kami sa Congress ni Brother Joel, lalong binibili. Kasi lalong na-intriga, di ba? Pag sinabi, grabe na to, kung ano-ano na pinapakita, kung ano-ano ng sexual post. Yung mga nakikinig, lalong bibili. Yung purpose nga namin na pagsasabi is that pabayaan mo muna mag-develop ang young teenager till they're 18 or 21 before they make their own decisions. Because if they get pregnant before 18 or before 21, limited na ang choices nila, no? So, sorry for the long context, but I was just going to ask na since nakikita ko nandun sa MTRCB ngayon, yung heart na yon, yung heart na maging guardian ng values ng ating youth, di ba? Baka they'd like to make a study regarding the MTRCB law. No, I know it's too controversial kung sasabihin ko magkaka-censorship na sa internet, but there are countries that block certain sites in the internet, di ba? Brother Robin will be more familiar with the Arab states, for example, na pagka pagka sobrang graphic, di ba? Can I just tutuldukan ko lang yung point ko, no? Kasi even during our time, Senator, di ba, during those times na ano man tawag ng mga pene movies, di ba, they're colloquial,
Yeah.
ano, di ba, colloquial, nung high school tayo, X-rated, triple X, di ba, o whatever. Oo. Yung disciplinary officer namin, yung disciplinary officer namin sa Lasal Alabang, siya ang pinaka may malaking collection ng X-rated kasi lahat ng kanyang i-confiscate, mukhang hindi rin tina-turn over. Nandun. But I'm making light of it, but you know, given yung paglaganap ng AIDS, paglaganap ng teenage pregnancy, paglaganap ng drugs, paglaganap ng or let me put it a different perspective. Remember in the 60s, 70s, yung mga sigarilyo, they were free to advertise. And first, in-advertise nila yung sigarilyo na talagang pag macho ka, sisigarilyo ka. Later on, they found out ang laking market ng women, so they started marketing na pag babae ka at naninigarilyo ka, cool ka. So we would grow up thinking na cool manigarilyo. Then of course, people like Juan Flavier came and launched the Yossi Kadiri and all the studies came na mali pala. No? So sa akin, it's not more of censorship, but more while people are young, we give them the right idea and the right information, then they can make their choices later on. The problem is, so let's say when we were young, yung usual na wag kang kumain na yung elbow mo na sa mayasa, don't talk with your mouth full. Some parents allow you to watch TV, some hindi. Pagkakain tayo, you face it. But for example, sa cellphone, wala talagang ethics ngayon eh. Even the teachers don't know what to teach eh. Di ba na when I'm talking to Senator Jinggoy like this, is it permissible for me to browse my cell phone? Eh baka naman I'm not browsing text message, nandun naman yung notes ko. So pag kinorek niya ako, di ba? When I'm in church, so nung una ayaw ng mga pastor, ayaw ng mga pare nung digital Bible, pero ngayon digital Bible na eh. So I do not hear the priest and pastors or imams already say na, I don't know the imams, brother, kasi hindi naman ako nakapasok pa during pagsamba, no? But nung araw, they keep saying, di ba, pag nasa church ka, tago mo naman ang cellphone mo, focus ka on the Lord. But ngayon, ang daming nagba-Bible at nagdo-notes na sa cellphone. So I'm just saying, it's a more confusing time. And I tell this with very much solemnity because Saturday morning, we woke up to a tragedy in Taguig. There were 2 high school students. Ini-investigate pa, pero possible suicide. And apparently, they even documented yung journey led to that. And we were so concerned kasi pag pinanood mo yung sa news sa US, usually may copycat. So pag wala kang sinabi, you know, it will not express the devastation of the community, the school, and the parents. Pag may sinabi ka naman, baka mabasa ng copycat. So we were just speaking about that. Tapos meron naman 26 years old na nag-suicide naman yesterday, also being investigated. So obviously, all these funny things on TV, on social media, is our way ng outlet. Pero tapos na yung COVID, pero hindi pa tapos yung pandemic sa mental health. No, so let me stop there and just encourage MTRCB that as you look at basically film and television, I would encourage you to make a study, and kung kailangan ng pondo for that study and international or local experts, di ba? To look at contemporary Filipino values that we can agree on, and then look nga in the new digital media, or even kahit hindi sa TikTok, Facebook, let's say Amazon, Netflix, HBO, di ba? So are they allowed na kahit anong ipakita? And di ba, for example, nung generation namin, yung Godfather, a lot of parents hanggang ngayon, or lolo na ngayon, or wala na ngayon, parang, kontrabida yan criminal yan. Pero people argue, hindi, may lesson. Kita mo nung huli, they all died devastated and they lost and everything, di ba? But there are some, kasi ngayon na, halimbawa, babastusin ng parents, wala naman point sa movie or anything. It just shows na binabastos. So some young people think it's okay not to honor your parents. So I'm not even talking about the 10 Commandments. I'm not talking about the Quran. I'm not talking about any religious book. I'm just talking about contemporary and traditional Filipino values that we always honor our parents. We cannot, even if we disagree, hindi mo mumurahin yung iyong magulang. But pag may napanood kasi sila na okay lang yon, di ba? And then may tampo ka sa magulang mo, nangyayari. So, thank you for this few minutes, Mr. President, and I hope, this next year you would consider studying or doing something in that regard.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And as chairman, I sincerely appreciate the valuable insights given to us by the gentleman from Taguig. And I think the MTRCB family is listening, and I'm certain that they will seriously consider and study the valid suggestions and recommendations of our colleague here, Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. And indeed, I agree with Senator Cayetano that the MTRCB is operating on a relatively old law and will not be able to address the challenges of the modern times and the digital age. And we will ensure that the MTRCB will furnish the good senator, the concerned Senate committee, with the results of the study that they will conduct. And I just received an information that several of our colleagues had already filed a resolution to expand the powers of the MTRCB. I think it was filed by Senator Robin Hood Padilla, and the title of the measure is an act strengthening and expanding the mandate, capabilities, and organizational structure of the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board, or the MTRCB, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree number 1986. And I do not have any idea if Senator Robin Hood Padilla has already conducted a hearing.
So that's why he was smiling, and
The status of the bill is that he already conducted a hearing, and the technical working group is working on it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Senate President, I saw him smiling when I was mentioning it. So I guess because that he already thought of it, and so tonight you will feel wonderful tonight that you're doing your job. One last insight lang, Mr. President.
Yes,
and
Mr. President.
when we finish the budget, they might want to consider putting a little bit of money, or we might want to consider for that study. I don't know if it's a secret, or I think among the people naman sa entertainment alam nito, that one of the secrets of ABS-CBN in their teledramas, novelas, is that they had an ongoing deep research of communities na alam talaga nila yung, so for example, kung sabihin mo yung bote ng beer, iba ang yabang ng nasa DNE na ilang case yan, at iba yung nasa ANB na ganito, di ba, travel and everything. So ako, I wouldn't mind really MTRCB having a research arm, because it's really difficult. I mean, hindi naman pwede kung sino chairman, values niya. Di ba? So hindi man pwedeng pagka very liberal yung chairman, bahala na kayo lahat ng gusto nyo. Pag very conservative, eto. So, but we do have to have a standard, and siguro the first standard is the Philippine Constitution, who makes mention of the Lord Almighty sa preamble pa lang, di ba? But another would be probably research, di ba? Na as you get the data from the communities, it might even help the filmmakers. Baka yung ibang filmmakers, ang tingin nila, ang gusto lang tao, violence at saka sex. Pero pag nakita nila, they're lonely for those, like ako pagka-Christmas, gustong-gusto ko yung mga movies ng mga small town na White Christmas sa US na may romantic twist and everything, and then it's all about family and about pagkakagalit na nagkakabati-bati, di ba? But you don't really know kasi trial and error din yung sa film. So I really wouldn't mind, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, if they had a good amount, no, a few millions for a research project or a continuing research project to keep themselves updated, para hindi rin tayo nanghuhula, para alam din nila na sa Mindanao, more ganito yung kanilang sentiment, at importante sa Mindanao, let's say peace. Kasi tayo dito, we take peace for granted, di ba? In Metro Manila, it's more of peace and order, yung mga criminal, but like in Mindanao, with their history, Visayas naman, isla-isla, no? So, I mean, a 10, 15 million or 1 million budget a month for continuing research, I think will go a long way in guiding the MTRCB. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you,
Maraming
Mr.
salamat.
President. Mr. President, I totally agree with the statements made by Senator Cayetano, and hopefully the MTRCB will consider putting up their own research arm in the succeeding years and include the same in their annual budget. And maybe the chairperson of the MTRCB is listening right now. Maybe we can ask Senator Cayetano to be one of your consultants, having been giving us a valuable insights, and I think mas may alam pa siya kaysa sa mga taong miyembro ng industriya ng pelikulang Pilipino, kaya siguro kailangan natin na yung kanyang mga insights sa MTRCB. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat.
Mr. President.
Thank you. Yes, Majority
Thank you.
Leader.
Mr. President, may I be allowed to just make a short manifestation and perhaps just pose one or two questions, Mr. President? Mr. President, we'd like to first of all manifest our support to the budget of MTRCB under the leadership of Chairperson Lala Soto Antonio, who is a very good friend of mine. We agree with Senator Alan Cayetano when he made mention that indeed we need a censorship body with clear and reasonable censorship guidelines rooted in Filipino values. We need a strong regulator that is committed to ensuring that values, Filipino values, are preserved and promoted, and all movies and TV shows have content that are suitable for public consumption, Mr. President. Hindi yun naman kasi pwede lahat na lang pwede. I-allow na lang lahat. And that's why, despite the fact na may mga hindi natutuwa sa ginagawa ni Chairperson Lala in ensuring that the shows that are allowed to be exhibited are proper, especially during hours when our young people, our young kids are watching, wala ho tayong pakialam sa kanila. We wanted to place on record that we are in full support of you, ma'am. And you have to keep on doing that because otherwise, wala nang gagawa po nito. Unfortunately, with the emergence of social media and parang wala na hong bawal lahat eh. Lahat pwedeng gawin. Lahat ng gusto mong gawin sa buhay ngayon pwede. Masakit man isipin, even some of the laws that we passed here, for example, yung vaping, when we passed that law, lahat kami dito nagkasundo na bawal i-promote sa bata, 100, 200 meters away from school, bawal na yung mga promo girls, etc., bawal ang mga flavors. Pero after passing the law, wala na ho. Wala na rin pong walang pakundangan na binabaliwala yung mga batas na ipinasa natin. Sa usapin ng anti-porno, Mr. President, and I'm glad that Senator Cayetano made mention about it, he was talking about an incident probably about 20 years ago in SM Mega Mall. And even then, Mr. President, until now, I cannot say that we were able actually to accomplish a lot of things because it has worsened. It's probably because also of our, parang normal na pupwede kang, diba? Meron nga ngayon na app sa telepono. Right now, I can register, I can watch whatever I wanted to watch. Walang magre-regulate, walang pipigil sa akin. Dati yung isabong, in 5 minutes, nakaregister ka, pwede ka nang tumaya. Ang dami yung nagpakamatay sa amin dun sa Bulacan dahil nalulun sa isabong. May pulis na ng hold up nung in-interview, may utang na siya na 500,000. May 16, 14 years old dun sa Davao, nalulun din sa isabong. Walang nag-take the cudgels of really looking after our moral fibers, kung saan pinagmamalaki natin yung katangian natin bilang mga Pilipino na hindi bastos, marespeto, hindi feeling entitled sa lahat ng bagay. And I think MTRCB is playing a significant role, and that's why I'm supporting the committee report being pursued by our dear colleague, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, na magkaroon ng mas malawak na saklaw. I also support the idea of having a research arm. Kasi Mr. President, sa nangyayari po sa ating kapaligiran, nakakalimutan na minsan kung ano yung pinanggalingan natin. And babanggitin ko yung sinasabi ng matatanda sa amin sa Bulacan, ang hindi daw lumingon sa pinanggalingan, hindi makakarating sa paroroonan. Parang nagiging cliche na lang, parang hindi ka na cool pag marespeto ka. Dapat bastos ka para pakinggan ka, parang nagiging cool ka, ganun. So if there's a show or anything that promotes such kind of ridiculous and wicked form of characteristics na hindi naman sa atin, hindi Pilipino, sino pa yung sisita? And so, Mr. President, distinguished colleague, the distinguished gentleman from San Juan, yung question ko lang siguro na ipopose is, ano ba talagang difference ng censorship at saka classification? Kailan ba pumapasok na censorship na? Or talagang classification lang? And walang exempted ho dito. Perhaps a lot of people would think I come from a religious family and kung ano yung pinaniniwalaan ko, dapat paniwalaan po ng lahat. Hindi po. I will never espouse on that kind of attitude because we have all the right to our faith. We have all the right to free speech. We have all the right to have our own religion. Ano yung paniwalaan natin. Pero hindi naman ho dapat at the same time ay magkaroon din ako ng karapatan, for instance, na bastusin ko yung ibang relihiyon. Nabastusin ko yung paniniwala ng ilang sektor of our society. Hindi rin ako dapat bigyan ng VIP treatment, Mr. President, na dapat ako, dahil majority ng Pilipino shares the same aspirations and beliefs and faith, dapat ako lang yung masunod. Hindi po. Ang point ko lang, Mr. President, dapat may nangangalaga sa ating kaugalian, sa ating binanggit ni Senator Alan Cayetano, yung kahalagahan ng ating preamble, and I will state it again. We, the sovereign Filipino people, imploring the aid of the Almighty God. Who is this God that we are referring to? Why are we saying that we need or we are imploring the aid, the help of the Almighty God? Because we know for a fact that at the end of the day, we believe that all of us, there's bigger things and issues bigger than us, bigger than our communities, bigger than our families. And that is our heritage, that is our culture as Filipinos. And that's why we need to value and protect Filipino values in this country. So again, let me again state for the record my sincerest thanks and gratitude to our dear colleague sponsoring the measure and our Chairperson Lala Soto Antonio, and my good friend, my basketball buddy, Tirso Cruz III. Salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Mr. President. I commiserate with the good majority leader in his concerns, and we would like to place on record some of the programs of the MTRCB related to this. Ang programang Matalinong Panonood sa Pamilyang Pilipino is one of the MTRCB's flagship project or activity, which started during the leadership of our dear colleague and former MTRCB chair, Senator Grace Poe. That is an information dissemination advocacy campaign that aims to empower the Filipino family and each and every one of its members on how to properly utilize the rating classification system. And I was informed by the chairperson, Ms. Lala, that before the enactment of MTRCB, before it came into light, there was a board of censors that usually cuts the film. Ngayon, itong MTRCB, hindi po nagpuputol ng pelikula. Kung hindi, they only classify and rate these movies that are submitted to the MTRCB. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I recognize our distinguished colleague to make a short manifestation, Mr. President, we are glad and blessed to be visited by Mr. Charlie Suarez, who is now with us in the gallery, our world boxing champion. We'd like to recognize him, Mr. President. Thank you. And congratulations, sir. Congratulations. Mr. President, may I move that we recognize our distinguished colleague from the province of Camarines Norte and Nueva Ecija, no other than Senator Robin Hood Padilla. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Our distinguished colleague, Senator Robin Hood Padilla, is recognized.
Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, ang aming lakan at sa atin pong pinunong mayorya. Gusto ko lamang pong magpasalamat kay Senator Alan Cayetano at kay Senator Joel Villanueva sapagkat nabigyan po kaagad ng, kumbaga, jet fuel itong aking committee report sapagkat sa inyo pong mga iminungkahi ang lahat po ng pagod na ginawa ng chairwoman ng MTRCB magmula po nang siya ay naupo, siya po ay palagi ang unang bisita sa opisina at hindi po siya nagsasawa na i-follow up itong panukala na ito na inilatag po ng tatlong ilang beto? 5 na mga masugid na mga senador, Senator Win Gatchalian, Senator Tolentino, Senator ang inyo pong lingkod, Senator Lapid, at Senator Estrada. At ito pong mga senador na ito ay tunay po na naglalakad at talaga pong nakikipaglaban upang ito pong panukala na ito, strengthening and expanding the mandate, capabilities, and organizational structure of the movie and television review and classification. Classification, malinaw po yun, board, hindi po censorship. Amending for the purpose Presidential Decree number 1986. Muli po, ako po ay bumabati lang sa atin pong napakasipag na chairwoman at sa ibinigay pong tulong ni Senator Alan at ni Senator Joel Villanueva. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Salamat.
Mr. President, Senator Francis Tolentino is also seeking the floor. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Our distinguished colleague, Senator Francis Tolentino, who is also in the movie industry. Because he used to produce the Metro Manila Film Festival.
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
President.
when he was
that's why-
president, when he was the chairman of the MMDA, he was the chairman of the Metro Manila Film Festival. Mr.
Sumasakay
President.
sa float yan.
Yes, Mr.
Your
President.
Honors.
That's why I'm trying to, I sought the floor because I'm trying, I just recalled my association with that measure filed by Senator Padilla, and I now recall my brief participation as well as my relevance then in having been part of the movie industry in a short period of time, not just for the Metro Manila Film Festival, but for the Cell Phone Film Festival, for the Indie Films Festival, and for the International Indie Films Festival, which I initiated half a decade ago, Mr. President. So I support this initiative as well as the upgrade and the immediate passage of the budget proposal for the MTRCB, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Tolentino, for your support. It's a budget ng MTRCB.
Mr. President, Senator Robin Hood Padilla would like to add something more, Mr. President. I
Yes, our
move that he be
distinguished
recognized.
colleague, Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
Opo, maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo, na gusto ko lamang din pong banggitin na ang lahat po ng aming mga inisyatibo, yaan po ay inumpisahan lahat ni Senator Grace po. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much po.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, I'm sure everyone's waiting for this motion, and because there being no other reservation for interpellation, I move that we close the period of interpellations and debate and consider the budget of Movie and Television Review and Classification Board to be deemed submitted for the body's consideration. I so move, Mr. President.
Before I act on the motion, I would just like to congratulate the men and women of the MTRCB because napapanood ko yung ano ninyo. Ma'am Lala, napapanood ko yung commercial ninyo eh. yung mga Kiko the Explorer, di ba? Ano ba papanoorin ng mga pamilya? It's very catchy. My kids like that, to watch that. Before they watch the film, yan ang pinapalabas nila. And it explains the ratings, di ba? Yung R rating, general patronage. Maganda siya, very clear and concise. So congratulations. Because I'm old school. I'm still an old school movie buff. Once a week, dinadala ko yung anak ko to the cinema to watch movies. So, it's iba eh. Iba yung napapanood mo na sa TV, iba talaga yung experience na napapanood mo sa pelikula, sa malaking movie house. So, let's continue supporting that. Let's continue promoting that. So, there being no objection to the motion of the majority floor leader, the budget of the movie... meron pa? Ay, sige. Senator Escudero is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, just to pursue the point of Senator Padilla. The power of the MTRCB is to classify, just so that we could all understand it. Not to censor, not to cut anything. In fact, if you identify something as R18, syempre yung producer, ayaw yun, gusto niya, wider audience, para mas malaki ang kita, hindi kayo yung puputol, sila ang puputol. Would that be correct?
Sila po mag-adjust.
Sila nga yung puputol kung may puputulin man.
Yes.
Not the MTRCB.
Not the MTRCB.
But the MTRCB will say, ano to R18 to because of these scenes. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Now, legally, can someone publicly exhibit an X-rated film in the Philippines?
No, Your Honor.
Because of what law?
Anti-pornography?
Under Presidential Decree number 1986, Mr. President.
Entitled?
Creating the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board and the implementing rules and regulations. No, the title is Creating the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board.
So the power, the legal basis not to allow the public showing of X-rated films is in the charter of the MTRCB, not in a separate law?
Yes, it is within the charter, Mr. President, of the MTRCB.
And there is no separate law, Mr. President, Your Honor?
I don't think so.
I believe there is. I believe there is, Mr. President, and that would
What
be
is
the
that,
stronger basis.
Can
Because
you please
According to
enlighten
the
this?
Secretariat, is Republic Act
7610?
9775.
9775?
Yeah.
again,
But this is child pornography, anti-child pornography.
Yes, Mr. President, I stand corrected. It is Republic Act 9775. What is the title? Anti-Child Pornography Act.
so pag hindi child,
Paglolo. Wala na manunod. Kakadiri.
no, the point I'm driving at, Mr. President, is if the charter of the MTRCB gives it the power to classify, it's simply implementing a provision of existing law to ban, for example, X-rated films from being publicly shown. Because when they classify it as X, then it falls under the special law, then it cannot be publicly exhibited. Would
Yes.
that be a correct statement, Mr. President?
That is correct, Mr. President.
Your Honor. And given that the title of the charter itself says Movie, Television, Radio Classification Board, the MTRCB does not have power over the Internet.
No. No.
Who has power over the Internet, Mr. President, Your Honor, if any?
Maybe it is the DICT, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I don't think it is in the mandate of the ICT to classify or say that certain sites, and I don't even think they have the competence, if at all, to say that certain sites should not be allowed in the Philippines.
Well, according to the chairperson of the MTRCB, the DICT can take it down if there are complaints, Mr. President.
Yes, the DICT has the power and authority to take it down, but who gets to decide?
Maybe they will assess, Mr. President. Maybe the the secretary or his subordinates.
The point I'm
We have
driving
to
at,
assess.
Mr. President, is that is not within the core competence of the DICT, and I think at some point in time, the MTRCB should be brought into the picture,
That is
either via the bill of Senator Padilla or via an amendment to their charter.
That is why there is a bill filed by some of our colleagues headed by Senator Padilla to expand the powers of the MTRCB.
To
Mr.
include
President.
that.
To include that, Mr. President.
And one last point, Mr. President, Your Honor. The issue pertaining to suspension of certain shows because of certain
Showtime,
conduct
Mr.
or words
President.
stated. I'm sorry, Mr.
Showtime.
Yes, specifically. Just to clarify, since that particular show is considered GP, right? So
PG,
if
PG.
PG?
Parental guidance.
PG siya?
Yes.
Since it's PG, that they violated the PG status was the reason for the suspension. Would that be correct?
I see the chairperson nodding, Mr. President.
It's not because of the power really to sanction certain conduct, but the fact that the classification given by MTRCB was violated by that particular scene, word, or act. That would be a correct interpretation?
That particular scene, act, and others. And among 11 other cases.
So a
Mr.
solution,
President.
if at all, would be, if that would be persistent, then a new classification can be, correct me if I'm wrong, given, and viewership limited. Is that an option on the part of MTRCB?
Well, according to the charter of the MTRCB, you're automatically PG if you are shown live on TV, Mr. President.
Because you cannot control what's going to go on.
Yes, you're correct, Mr. President.
Understood, Mr. President. We learned something new today. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished sponsor, and I'd like to thank the MTRCB family. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. So without further ado, Mr.
Yes,
Majority
Mr.
Floor Leader.
President, and may I just move for the previous question, Mr. President, to close the period of interpellations and debate on the budget of the movie
Movie,
and Television Review and
Classification
Classification Board.
There
With
being
him
no
submitted
objection
for
to
the body's
to
consideration.
the motion of the Majority Floor Leader, the MTRCB's budget is deemed submitted. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I ask for a minute suspension?
Session suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we consider the budget of Governance Commission for Government-Owned or Controlled Corporations and acknowledge the presence of its officials headed by the chairperson himself, Chairperson Marius Corpus. And we'd like to move that we recognize the distinguished sponsor of the measure, no other than Senator Jinggoy Estrada, and to interpolate our Minority Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel. I so move, Mr. President.
Our distinguished sponsor, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, is recognized to sponsor the budget of the GCG and to interpolate the distinguished Minority Floor Leader, Senator Coco Pimentel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we are presenting for the approval of the body the proposed 2024 budget of the Governance Commission for Government-Owned or Controlled Corporations, or the GCG. The total new appropriations of the GCG for fiscal year 2024, as proposed by your Committee on Finance, is 202,765,000. This is the same amount that was proposed by the Department of Budget and Management under the National Expenditure Program and by the House of Representatives under the General Appropriations Bill. The proposed budget for 2024 is 51% lower than the appropriations in 2023, which is equivalent to a reduction of 209,936,000. The whole GCG family, led by its chairperson, Marius Corpus, is present here today. Mr. President, we are ready to reply to the questions from our colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, our sponsor mentioned the level of the budget of GCG at 202 million for next year. Is it higher or lower than this year's budget for
It's
GCG?
lower, Mr. President.
Lower? By how much?
Lower by 209,936,000.
Okay, can we get an explanation as to nangalahati po bale, nangalahati. So what programs, activities and projects of the GCG might be affected with this tremendous reduction, Mr. President?
Well, first of all, the personal services, it was reduced by 114,291,000. The MOE was reduced by 66,245,000, and the capital outlay with zero budget, it was reduced from the 2023 GAAT of 29,400,000.
Sige po, siguro we will assume yung capital outlay baka built na or
Yes.
procured na.
The reason, if I may
yes,
add,
Papa.
Mr. President, the reason for the reduction of the personal services
Yes.
is that there was a low utilization rate, Mr. President. The following items significantly contribute to the observed decrease of budget of the GCG. First is the budget for the compensation position classification system amounting to 48 million is only proposed once every 3 years. The budget for the CPCS is not included in the proposed fiscal year 2024 budget. And the basis of the budget for the personal services is the actual filled position of the Governance Commission as of April 28 of 2023, as compared to the 100% filled plantilla position of GCG for 2023. And the entire budget for the capital outlay of this commission was cut in the proposed 2024 budget, Mr. President.
Hindi, ilan po yung authorized positions ng GCG at ilan po yung field nila, Mr. President?
The authorized positions, ilan yung authorized position? The authorized position, according to the chairperson, is 236.
And then field?
Unfilled. The filled positions are 106, Mr. President.
So taken against them yun, bale? Because the reduction.
Yes, that is why the DBM only approved
Kaya nga.
the 106 filled positions. And they are currently hiring, they are currently hiring personnel for the unfilled position. And that is why there might be a problem for next year's budget kasi nga hanggang dito na lang kasi tataas yung kanilang PS.
Meron po MPBF. Meron naman po MPBF. Meron tayong MPBF items sa
yes,
budget.
yes,
Apo.
yes.
So the GCG is under new leadership. Tama? So,
Yes,
okay. So, hindi natin sila
he was appointed August 4 of this year,
Sige
Mr. President, replacing. And the commissioners, how many commissioners do they have? They have 3 commissioners.
Can we get the names of all the new leaders of GCG? Ano po?
The chairperson is former Undersecretary of the Department of Interior and Local Government, Mr. Marius Corpus. And the commissioners are Attorney Brian Keith Hosaka and Attorney Geraldine Marie Berberabe Martinez. Nasaan? Geraldine. Is she here? Sino isa? That's it, Mr. President.
3 of them. Oo nga, tatlo. Okay.
One chairperson and 2 commissioners.
Yes, okay. Miss Berberabi was here earlier.
Yes, I think she had to go to
I saw her.
Malacanang,
Yes, I saw.
Your Honor.
Okay, so what was this? So, sabi nga ni Senator Chis kanina, we learn at least one new thing every day. Ano po yung sinabi ng sponsor na it is a part of PS but funded every 3 years? Ngayon lang po ako naka-encounter na. What is that, Mr. President?
The CPCS, this is the
What is that?
budget for the compensation and position classification system. Your Honor.
Do all the agencies get that, Mr. President? Compensation for...
All GOCCs, Your Honor.
And then it's budgeted every 3 years. Parang cycle siya for the GOCCs. Because why every 3 years? What is it for? What is that item for?
It is only the GCG because the law requires them to review every 3 years the compensation and position classification system, Mr. President.
This is the amount. This is the amount you need to perform that particular mandate. Malaki din po I mean, 60 million po ba yan?
48?
Ha?
48 million,
48
Mr.
million.
President.
Malaki din po. So to review, kasi itong GCG, Mr. President, Mr. Sponsor, parang nagsuscoring yan Parang
Yes.
may report card
They-
ang mga GOCCs, ginigrade
They
na nila.
evaluate, Your Honor.
Kaya nga, dapat model, din kayo You're a model agency. Kaya wag kayong 200 plus ang authorized ninyo, tapos ang field ninyo 100 plus lamang. Kasi baka pag i-grade naman kayo ng ibang ahensya, kayo naman po ang lumagapak sa inyong report card, Mr. President. So just be conscious of that. Alam ko you grade it. What is that purpose? You grade them so that they can implement their financial parang bonuses or what?
For their performance-based bonus according to
Ayun,
the chairperson, Mr.
So you
Mr.
grade
President.
them pagka pumasa, then if they have a plan for a performance-based bonus, they can implement it, execute it. Pag hindi pumasa, they cannot do it.
Well, they have to submit it to the commission for their approval, Mr. President.
Do you approve the terms of the performance-based bonus, but I think you also assess the performance of the GOCC per some criteria that you set. Is that correct? Ganon.
Well, I see the chairperson nodding. I think he agrees
Yes,
with your
yes,
statement,
that's
Mr.
how I
President.
understand what they do. Okay, how many GOCCs are under the jurisdiction of the GCG?
82,
Subject to that grading or report submission process, Mr. President? 100.
We have 118 GOCCs.
Okay. How
Mr.
many are
President.
complying with your system of reportorial requirements?
77. Where?
So, itong 2 and 3, natanong ko na. Yan yung decrease, di ba? Okay. Ito na lang.
Well, according to the chairperson, Your Honor, 98.71% or 78 GOCCs with complete and compliant submissions have been issued authorization to implement the CPCS as of October 25 this year, Mr. President.
So yung mga, those who are, no, are the other GOCCs not complying or not passing? They are submitting reports but they are not passing to your criteria. 118 ba GOCCs? 118. Kung matadagdagan na isa.
Ito. Okay, what about those non-compliant?
Yun ang akin.
What's PBB? For PBB? Dito yung channel 2. Performance based. No sanction, okay. Well, Your Honor, there are 82 GOCCs that have complied, and the rest have not complied. And there is no law or specific sanction, Mr. President, to those non-compliant agencies.
Pero may effect sa kanila.
Yes, of
right?
course.
Okay.
They will not be eligible. They will not be eligible for the PBB or the performance-based bonus, Mr.
Kahit
President.
may plano silang gawin yun, magiging illegal if they implement it without complying with
Yes,
the,
you are
with
correct,
the law.
Mr. President.
Okay, so at least alam nila na meron pong effect. Okay. Hindi ba kayo nadagdagan ng isa pa to be subject to your jurisdiction? Is the Maharlika Investment Corporation
Yes,
supposed
it
to be a
is,
GOCC under? Is that counted sa 118 or will make it 118 plus 1?
Not yet, Mr. President.
So even that Maharlika Investment Corporation will have to submit the reports if should they have a performance-based bonus. Actually, nasa law, meron eh.
Yes, Mr. President, you are correct.
Can the GCG, is the GCG more than just receiving and evaluating the report submitted to you? Do you also concern yourselves with making sure that the functions, the transactions of a special creature like the Maharlika Investment Corporation would be more transparent and understandable by the public, Mr. President?
Mr. President, once the Maharlika Investment Corporation is operationalized, the corporation will be subject to the performance, the transparency, and disclosure requirements of the Governance Commission. Sections 3M and 4, number 4 of Republic Act 10149, subject GFIs under GCG's oversight to ensure financial viability, fiscal discipline, good governance, and extraordinary diligence over the care of state rights and GOCC assets. GCG, in the performance of its duties under Section 5C of RA 10149, actively exercises state ownership rights in GOCCs through the institutionalization of a performance evaluation scorecard. The GCG has partnered with the Asian Development Bank to capacitate its key personnel on understanding and monitoring the management of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, Mr. President.
Yes, ito kasing Maharlika Investment Corporation is one of its kind GOCC. First time we were attempting to form a sovereign wealth fund, and we did not form a sovereign wealth fund. Okay, we retained the phrases or the phrase sovereign wealth fund. Yet this is a fund where we allow private sector to invest, and we allow foreigner private individuals also to invest. So this is a very special kind of creature. Will the GCG subject the Maharlika Investment Corporation to special rules or just the regular run-of-the-mill rules of the GCG applicable to the rest of the 118 GOCCs, Mr. President? Ano yung kaya performance evaluation yung kanila, no?
Mr. President, that is why this GCG had partnered with the ADB to formulate possible rules and regulations that will be applicable to the Maharlika Investment Fund, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, medyo give this some special attention and study kasi this is supposed to be ano ba to, yung to generate funds, it meant to generate funds, but then it also to implement developmental projects na walang return. And then you will perform a performance evaluation of such a corporation, which is run already by, supposed to be by the best minds in the financial industry, Mr. President. So, are we sure the GCG can evaluate the performance of such a group of people, Mr. President?
Well, under the law that we passed, it's called now the Republic Act 11954, the establishment of the Maharlika Investment Fund, there is a joint congressional oversight committee, and there shall be created a Maharlika Investment Fund Joint Congressional Oversight Committee to oversee, monitor, and evaluate the implementation of this act. The MIF-JCOC, or the Joint Congressional Oversight Committee, shall be composed of 7 members, each from the House of Representatives and the Senate. And the role of the GCG in the operations of the Maharlika Investment Corporation is that Sections 3 and 4 of RA 1049 or 10149 or the GCG law subject GFIs under GCG's oversight to ensure financial viability, which I mentioned earlier, Mr. President, fiscal discipline, good governance, and extraordinary diligence over the care of state rights and GOCC assets.
Siguro you have metrics that you use, mga ganun? Ratio and proportion, mga ganun? Yeah.
Yes, Mr. President, the performance evaluation scorecard.
Scorecard, kaya nga, yun yung composed of formula, anong formula sabi. Sige po, so we are here to support the GCG kasi very critical yung nature, yung inyong tasks, especially now that we all admit that the Maharlika Investment Corporation is under your jurisdiction. So is there a wish list from the GCG, Mr.
Yes,
President?
there is, Mr.
Magkano pong
President.
total ang gusto nila?
May wish list yan. Sana? Ito?
I-note natin magkano, tsaka para saan. Banggatin naman ng chairman. Para saan. Sige, note niyo.
Okay, wish list, Mr. President. Additional personal service amounting to 84 million, and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD, Asia 2024 meeting funds.
Okay.
They have, I think they have this event, which will be held here in Manila. Next year, Mr. President. And it will entail around 4.5 million pesos. And increase in operational capacity amounting to 15.1 billion pesos, and the enhancement of major ICT projects and capabilities for a total of 168.4 million.
Yung 4.5 million, that's the amount for hosting an OECD event?
Yes, Mr. President.
So
Very good.
we are not a member of OECD, but what's our business hosting them, Mr. President?
Well, the GCG has been chosen by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development as the host for the 17th meeting of the OECD Asia Network on Corporate Governance of State-Owned Enterprises in 2024. The OECD Asia Network meeting provides a forum to share experiences, identify good practices, and develop recommendations for reform to improve state ownership practices and strengthen the OECD guidelines. The Governance Commission plans to invite around 200 international and local high-level officials to participate. 22 countries are targeted to be represented in the meeting. 4.5 million is requested for this
Yes, sir.
activity, Mr. President.
So, ang request na lang siguro natin, if the results could be published so that we will all benefit from the meeting of the top-level
Discussion.
yes, the top-level
Or
discussion.
dialogue.
Yes. Thank you. Last point, Mr. President. Basta we're here to support the GCG. Very critical na po ngayon kayo. Noon pa, pero all the more now. Ito po, just in a news report in the Inquirer, the DBP is challenging the GCG's pronouncement that the GCG has the power to determine whether DBP and the Land Bank of the Philippines should be merged without going through legislation. So, may we get your the position? Was this a pronouncement of the old leadership or of the current leadership, Mr. President?
Well, Mr. President, in a letter dated November 29 of 2022, the Department of Finance endorsed for GCG's consideration and approval its proposal to merge with the Land Bank and the Development Bank of the Philippines, with Land Bank as the surviving entity. And the Congress has delegated to the President, by virtue of Section 5 of the GOCC Governance Act of 2011, the power to reorganize and merge GOCCs. Section 5A of the GOCC Governance Act of 2011 provides that, upon determination by the GCG that it is to the best interest of the state that a GOCC should be recognized, merged, streamlined, abolished, or privatized, it shall implement the reorganization, merger, or streamlining of the GOCC, unless otherwise directed by the President. Thus, Section 5A authorizes the merger of Land Bank and DBP without the need to enact a new law.
So that's a November 2022 letter. So does the present leadership agree with what is there?
Well, the proposed merger, Your Honor, is still under further evaluation and study, Mr. President.
Kasi ang aking position, Mr. President, these two BOCCs or governmental entities have their own charters, which are republic acts or laws. So, in effect, if we merge them and then may surviving entity,
Is Land
we
Bank.
practically repealed the charter of the disappearing entity and amended the charter of the surviving entity. So, and without any law. So, the question is, can that be done by virtue of section of that section 5 of a certain law, Mr. President?
That is why, Mr. President, it is still under evaluation and
sige.
it still needs further study, Mr. President. And according to the officials of the GCG, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of the Governance Commission in the case of Representative Edsel Lagman versus Executive Secretary Paquito Choa Jr. et al. That was dated November 3 of 2020, and Prospero Pichay Jr. versus GCG et al. On November 3 of 2020, Mr. President.
But maybe the issue in that case is the law, constitutionality of the law creating the GCG. Hindi naman po yung ang aking yung aking point is the DBP and the LBP merger, Mr. President. Should it be done through law, or can it be done through Section 5 of that particular law, Mr. President? I'm not questioning the constitutionality of the GCG. So ano ba ibang pwedeng tanong dito? ODCC, DOJ, or OSGC na bang magbibigyan ng...
This is according to Supreme Court.
Do we need a law to...
Well, according to the chairperson of the GCG, Section 5 of the GOCC says it is a valid delegation of legislative power.
In that particular case,
That is according to the Supreme Court. Your
why
Honor.
was it at issue? Why was Section 5 at issue in that particular case? What were the GOCCs involved in the case?
Undue delegation.
Tignan nyo na lang, kuha nyo na case title, basahin nyo na lang.
Undue legislation of delegation. Delegation of merge abolition of Well, the issue here is the undue delegation of the power to merge or abolish the GOCCs, Mr. President.
Yes, naging issue siya because there was a merger of two GOCCs.
Nang-merge ba? Meron ba merger na nangyari? Ha? Ano na?
Baka theoretical question lang po. So, must have been decided on a technicality kung ganun. So anyway, Mr. President, we got that case title. Basahin na lang din po namin. Siguro last question na lang. On the DBP-LBP merger, siyempre kumukuha tayo ng opinion. In the setup of government, what government entity should give us the guiding opinion whether it can be done administratively by the President or by legislation? Opinion lang ha, yung opinion. So is it the GCG, the OSG, OGCC, or the DOJ? Yan lang pong naiisip ko na may mga parang law firm, law office function eh.
Better be sure of one. OSG?
It should be.
Well, there
Should
are
be this-
differing opinions, Mr. President.
But
On my
let me
left
get
and on my right.
No, the leadership's opinion. Is
Well,
is it you? Do you
According
claim
to
that
them, it is the GCG,
okay,
Mr. President.
that's the claim of the GCG. Okay, that you should be the ones issuing the opinion to guide us. To guide lang to, hindi naman to
Yes.
binding. Okay, if you are that entity, when are you coming up with the said opinion?
You have timeline? You have a timeline? Well, they do not have any timeline, but they are still in the process of collating the comments from the various GOCCs.
Hindi, DBP, LBP lang po to merger. I mean, you should not take your time. Dapat siguro may self-imposed deadline din po tayo.
Well,
If ito, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, if the GCG claims that it is the proper agency to render an opinion whether it can be done under Section 5 of their law, so therefore administratively, or do we need Congress to act to amend the two charters? Yun lang yun, opinion. If you are that correct entity to issue that opinion, yun lang tanong ko. Give us a self-imposed deadline for you to come up with the opinion. We will not necessarily agree, pero at least meron tayong pinag-uusapan.
Well, Mr. President, I think they have a difficulty answering that question. I think they do not have yet a timeline to give because they are still in the process of studying it and evaluating the merger, Mr. President. It is still under review, Mr. President.
Well, at sa iba po yung hindi viability yung question ko po, Mr. President. On on the legality. So maybe the GCG is not the correct agency. So anyway, we will just answer the question ourselves, Mr. President. Mag-research din po kami on what should be that agency to give us the initial lang naman eh. The initial guiding opinion. We don't have to agree with the opinion. It also can be the wrong position. It can turn out to be the wrong position, Mr. President. So, okay. Okay na? Sino ba nagbibigay? Ang Office of the Executive Secretary, nagbibigay din ba ng opinion? Of Presidential Legal Counsel? Gusto ko naman opinion kasi baka hindi sila kasi research pa nila sa videos. Hindi naman sa viability. Baka din sila sa viability.
Mr. President, right now I was informed that the GCG is consulting the following agencies like the COA, the BSP, the PCC, DOF, and the DBM, Mr. President. They're still consulting with each other.
Parang
Mr.
as part
President.
of preliminary background research. Pero
Yes.
I suggest we put a deadline po, Mr. Chairman and GCG kasi. Otherwise, parang wala tayong starting position at subject to of our debates on what to do. So at any rate, Mr. President, I reiterate my full support to the GCG, and we will go over the wish list, the requested augmentation of the budget of the GCG. So we wish them all the best, Mr. I know they're new to the agency, pero we wish you all the best in your enormous but important tasks. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also.
Thank you, Mr. Minority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much to our distinguished Minority Floor Leader.
Wala na Majority Leader.
Are there anyone of these gentlemen going to ask? I can recognize them directly. If not, we ask for a minute suspension. Session suspended for a minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there being no other reservation for interpellation, I move that we close the period of interpellations and debate and consider the budget of the Governance Commission for Government-Owned or Controlled Corporations to be deemed submitted for the body's consideration. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader, the budget of the Governance Commission on Government-Owned and Controlled Corporations is hereby deemed submitted. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I ask for a minute suspension?
Session suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we consider the budget of the Commission on Human Rights, Commission on Human Rights Violations Victims Memorial Commission, and acknowledge the presence of its officials headed by the chairperson himself, Richard Palpalatok. Mr. President, we would like to move that we recognize the distinguished sponsor of the measure, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, and to interpolate the distinguished gentleman from Taguig and Pateros, no other than Senator Alan Peter Cayetano. I so move, Mr. President.
Thank you,
There being
Mr.
no
President.
objection to the motion, we'd like to recognize the sponsor, Senator Jinggoy Estrada.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before you acknowledge Senator Alan Peter Cayetano, Mr. President, for the record, the budget of the Commission on Human Rights is 934 million pesos, and for its attached agency, the Memorial Commission, the budget is 38.8 million. With us today are the heads of the agencies, namely Chairperson Richard Palpalatok for the CHR, and Executive Director Carmelo Victor Chuck Crisanto for the Memorial Commission. We are ready to receive questions, Mr. President.
Good afternoon, Mr. Senate President. Again, dear Senator, Chairman, Vice Chairman for APRO Finance, Senator Jinggoy Estrada, who's no stranger in fighting for human rights, especially the rights of our laborers. And throughout his career, he has brought out many issues and injustices against our OFWs and has been proactive, not only pointing out yung abuses, but actually napakarami na rin yung bills amending the labor code sa migrant workers and everything. So I'm quite happy that you are defending the budget of the CHR. Sa CHR family, magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. I will not violate Chairman Estrada's human right because I think he has an appointment mamaya. So I will try to speed up. Mr. Chairman, may I first ask, ano yung pinaka-basis ng CHR o Commission on Human Rights? What's their operating system or their basis in terms of promoting, fighting for human rights, exposing human rights violation? So, kumbaga, Mr. President, kung ang Senate, it's the Philippine Constitution and the rules of the Senate, ano yung framework na in-adapt ng CHR in everything they do?
Well, the mission of the Commission on Human Rights as the conscience of the government and the people, we seek truth in human rights issues and prevent incidents of human rights violations. As beacon of truth, we make people aware of their rights and guide government and society towards actions that respect the rights of all, particularly those who cannot defend themselves, particularly those who are disadvantaged, marginalized, and vulnerable, Mr. President.
Mr. President, the reason I ask that is that it is so difficult to have a country of 110 million Filipinos, different languages, different subcultures, mayaman, mahirap, napakayaman, nag-aral sa abroad, nag-aral sa sarili nilang bayan, nakiisla sa ibang lugar kasi maganda yung university doon. So it's so difficult to come together and share contemporary or to be able to describe contemporary Filipino values. That's why I do not want to ask questions that will divide, but rather questions that will strengthen the CHR and strengthen their mission to protect the human rights. So may I ask if the legal framework or the operating system of the CHR should be, number one, not necessarily in this order, but number one, the Philippine Constitution, and number two, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Does the chairperson agree with that? And of course, other existing laws and regulations, no?
Well, first, it's the Philippine Constitution, the 1987 Philippine Constitution, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and international treaties, to which the Philippine government is a signatory.
The reason I asked that question, or the big why, is madali po tayong mag-away dito kung ano ang kinoconsider na human rights nowadays, because every ideology has its idea of human rights. So for example, the communists will think as capitalists as violative of their human rights, and it should be the state, di ba, ang nagpapatakbo ng, let's say, mode of production. So with so many ideologies and so many religions, which also injects isms and schools of thought, even the word disciple, means student, di ba? We can easily get lost. So it is very dangerous not to have a CHR. And in fact, many countries lauded the Philippines because we're one of the few, if not the only or the first, na nasa constitution mismo yung pagkakaroon ng CHR. So even when we have presidents who are very verbose about certain human rights like President Duterte, no one in this chamber or in Congress ever thought of abolishing the CHR. There were disagreements, but no one ever thought, di ba, of abolishing. In fact, even the most dangerous dictatorships might want to have a CHR just so that they will appear, di ba, to have legitimacy, no? So I asked that question because I read this article, Statement of CHR Executive Director Attorney Jacqueline Ann de Guia, welcoming the House Speaker's support for legislative agenda for women. But before that, there was another article where, as it said, walang problema po yung ibang pinupush ng CHR for empowering women, reproductive health, etc. No? There are some controversial issues. Hindi controversial yung non-discrimination. SOGI bill, we'll all have our opinion there. But kasama sa pinupush allegedly is abortion, to decriminalize abortion. May I know if this is true and what is the context of this? Is it an official CHR recommendation? Is it the recommendation of the executive director, or is this a misquote?
Well, the person that you mentioned is present here. Maybe I have to consult her first. Did you make this statement? You're in favor of abortion? Here comes a member of the Human Rights. Well, Mr. President, if I may continue. The statement was given by Ms. Jacqueline de Guia, and she's at my back. and she confirmed to me that she gave that statement during the 5th Commission, which was headed by then Commissioner Chito Gascon during the Aquino administration. Mr. President, personally, I am against abortion. I am a devout Catholic, and it is against the teachings of the Church. And it is penalized under existing laws. And if ever the CHR is in favor of the abortion, I will be the first one to oppose or go against them. Yes.
May I also put on record that this representation, Senate President of the Philippines, is vehemently against abortion at any stage. No? I just want to put that on record so that I can put in the records of this August chamber that there are people who are willing to fight for life, not for death, particularly defenseless children who have no opportunity to have a voice of their own. In the United States, dear gentlemen, they're already allowing late-stage abortion on the 3rd trimester. Bata na yun eh. Di ba? My God. May God forgive them. May God forgive them. I think that is a big mistake. I believe in karma, Your Honor. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, first of all, I cannot agree more with the statements made by our Senate President together with the sponsor of the measure. I am just surprised to learn about this today, Mr. President, and just like the distinguished gentleman from Taguig and Pateros, we wanted to find out, is this now the position of the Commission or just a position of any Tom, Dick, or Harry trying to influence the whole world, this country, that it is indeed the position of the Commission on Human Rights?
Well, Mr. President, according to Ms. Jacqueline here, who gave that, who confirmed to me that she gave that statement, that she does not support abortion. She only supports the decriminalization of abortion insofar as it affects the life of the mother. According to them, many women die because of unsafe abortions, and it affects the life of the mother.
And this is the position of the Commission
well,
or just the position of the person in charge?
The present commission, according to the chairman, has not taken a stand with regard to the statement made by Ms. Jacqueline.
I'm
And
sorry,
they are
Mr.
still-
President, but is it a normal practice that any Tom, Dick, or Harry from the Commission can actually make statements like that? And that's
Well,
why
that
right
is
now
why
we are talking about it?
That is why, Mr. President, they are still studying the matter anew, Mr. President. And I don't think if it is a careless statement or a statement made out of jest or whatever.
Anyway, Mr. President, I will wait for my turn as this representation is not listed as one of interpellators. I will now put my name there as one of the interpellators, Mr. President. Thank you, distinguished colleague. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, can I, just for clarity,
Yes.
because hindi yun yung na-report sa international forums na pro-abortion, pro-choice. Ang sinabi, finally, the Philippines is loosening up because the CHR is asking na ma-decriminalize ang abortion period. So, it's very clear to me, na-clarify nyo na hindi ito ang posisyon ng
CHR.
Commission, ng CHR. But is the Executive Director now...
Because, Mr. President, if this is the position of the CHR and if it favors abortion, I will not defend this budget, Mr. President. Because there is no way that I will support abortion.
Thank
Mr.
you for that,
President.
Mr. Chair, and I'll go to that now. But let me just, for the record, be very clear. Is the Executive Director and in her statements limiting it to when the life of the mother is at stake, or did she say period and did not make any... I just want to know the truth. Now. I do not mind if she is now making a clarification now. But what I want to know, in those two instances in the past, that she did make a public declaration did she make a distinction na only in these cases, or did she categorically just state na she is for the...
Well, according to Ms. Jacqueline Digia, they just recommended the review of the decriminalization of abortion, Your Honor.
So in other words, ngayon niya lang clarify when the life of the mother is at stake. But when she first stated it, walang qualification. Correct? She's nodding, so it's correct?
Yes, I can see
Okay.
her nodding, Mr. President.
Sige. So I will explain why it is so dangerous. The good chairperson is also and has long been the head of the CA contingent that confirms ambassadors. And as we both know, Senator, can ambassadors give a different position from the position of their state? Of their state. So if I am an ambassador, I am called by the U.S. President. Am I duty bound to give my position or the position of my government and my state?
He or she has to give the position of the state, Mr. President.
And if I
as
give up my
understand.
personal position and it's against the state, I get recalled by my secretary, right?
I think so, Mr. President.
Okay. So I do not mind opinions. It is their right, especially on contemporary human rights issues. But as far as abortion is concerned, it is settled in our Philippine Constitution. Article 2, Section 12, the state recognizes the sanctity of family life and shall protect and strengthen the family as a basic autonomous social institution. It shall equally protect the life of the mother and the life of the unborn from conception. So our Constitution is quite unique kasi sinabi na life starts at conception. The natural and primary right and duty of parents in rearing the youth for civic efficiency and development of moral character shall receive the support of the government. So meaning, the executive director of a very sensitive commission is giving her own opinion, which is contrary to the Philippine Constitution. If she was an ambassador, she would have been recalled and reprimanded. How come there is no outrage from the commission that there is such a statement? How can you have an executive director? So if the Senate President says, diba, that the Senate will meet every 3 o'clock and the Secretary says we will meet at 5 o'clock, okay lang yun? Is the Executive Director allowed to have her own opinion and speak for the CHR?
Your Honor, Mr. President, upon a consultation with the chairman, it was the position of the 5th Commission under then-Chair Chito Gascon, and Ms. Jacqueline Digia was the spokesperson of during the 5th Commission.
Well, in that case, Mr. President, I apologize to the Filipino people for not being able to see that, to monitor that, and to speak earlier. Because the Commission has no right whatsoever to take a position that is contrary to the Philippine Constitution. It is not part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which will be celebrating its 75th year, yung abortion. In fact, baliktad, right to life. The only difference is that in the Universal Declaration, hindi sinabi doon kung saan yung right to life. Diba? So that is my point, Mr. President. We cannot fund a commission that will be espousing something that is, if I may use the word ultra vires, or outside what they can do. So kung hindi clear ang batas, hindi clear yung right, wala pa tayong batas dyan, they can of course advocate it. Diba? No one's muscling them. But in terms of abortion, and let me move to, discuss with you, Mr. Chairman, but move to pag sinabi mo i-decriminalize, yun din yun eh. Kasi pag hindi na criminal, di pwede. So, I am in shock, but I don't want to speak kasi wala na dito si Chito and he's a good friend. But Chito was member of the Constitutional Convention, if I'm not mistaken. And in the Constitutional Convention, na-discuss doon. Pag ang doktor ay meron pong choice between the mother and the child, pwede niyang piliin yung mother. Hindi mo na kailangan i-decriminalize yun kasi hindi criminal. Even sa justifying circumstances ng revised penal code. Diba, if you're in the operating table and may danger dun sa life ng mother, the senator is not only a human rights activist, not only a senator, is also an actor. Ilan sine ba napanood natin, di ba? Nakukonsultihin yung tatay kung unconscious yung nanay. Sir, sinong isa-save natin? Yung nanay o yung bata? Hindi murder yon sa doktor pagka pinili niya. At hindi abortion yon in the sense that we know. Di ba? So, for me, medyo may pagkapalusot doon na sasabihin natin to decriminalize it lang. Pag decriminalize mo, pwede na yon. So, how can you protect the unborn if you're not going to put any penalty if people abort the fetus or the baby? Jaywalking nga lang, Mr. President, meron tayong penalty. Di ba? Perjury, magsinungaling ka dito, meron tayong penalty. Di ba? Libel has a criminal penalty, although some are asking na i-decriminalize for journalists, di ba? Pero i-decriminalize mo abortion, ganun din yon. In effect, sinabi mo, pwede na. Di ba? Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I totally agree with my colleague here, Senator Alan Peter. Well, according to the executive director then, or the spokesperson then during the Fifth Commission, it was not her personal stand. It was the stand, it was the position of the Fifth Commission. In fact, according to them, 2 reports were signed at the time, namely the 2016 Reproductive Health Inquiry. Inquiry report, and the 2019 another reproductive health inquiry report. Am I correct? There were 2 situational reports according to her, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, nothing...
And I do not know,
Yeah.
if I may, I do not know what is the stand of the present commission with
Yes.
regard to the decriminalization.
I was
of,
going to say that, Mr. Chairman, you
abortion,
read my
Mr.
mind.
President.
So, I do not take it against the executive director. I don't know her. I always assume as government officials, you're doing your job. But I had to bring it up because it was brought up sa akin.
Yes.
So, maybe, give me 3 minutes to wrap up, but do natin simulan.
And that
Do
is
we
a
have
very
a
important
categorical...
And I am happy and I am elated that you brought that issue out,
Thank
Mr.
you.
President.
So do we have a categorical answer from the whole commission that they stand by the Philippine Constitution, that they have to protect the life of both the mother and the unborn child? Ergo, the Philippines, you know, the Senate President can speak for millions of Filipinos. He can speak for the Senate. But sometimes you cannot speak for the Filipino people. I mean, it's just too presumptuous, di ba? Even the President, theoretically, he speaks for Filipinos, but to say that you speak for all Filipinos. But when you quote the Philippine Constitution, you are in fact speaking for all Filipinos. So when the Philippine Constitution says, di ba, that you will protect the life of the unborn, that is speaking in behalf of the Filipino people from the time it was ratified to all future generations, unless the Constitution is amended. If you want to advocate the amendment and pro-abortion, then get out of the commission or get out of government and do it. But you took an oath eh. Yung oath mo is to uphold the Constitution. It is not upholding the Constitution by clearly advocating something against it. So do we have a categorical answer from the CHR now that they will uphold the right to life, no, and be against abortion?
Well, we thank the good senator for this for his valuable inputs, especially with regard to this abortion. The Commission on Human Rights assures the Senate that there is no position on abortion. CHR values the right to life of all, as enshrined in the 1987 Constitution. The present commission is still studying the matter on abortion, and I suggest that you do not study anymore the matter of abortion. Just,
Mr. President.
I don't even think that you should decriminalize abortion, Mr. President.
Sir President, let me read this statement during the Constitutional Convention, then make my comment regarding the Commission stand. This is a quote from Commissioner Bernardo Villegas. The clear and unequivocal intent of the framers of the 1987 Constitution in protecting the life of the unborn from conception was to prevent the legislature from enacting a measure legalizing abortion. It was so clear that even the court cannot interpret it otherwise. Very, very few to sa Constitution na sinasabi na hindi pwede i-interpret ng court. The principal proponent of the protection of the unborn from conception explained, the intention is to make born from conception explained, the intention is to make sure that there would be no pro-abortion laws ever passed by Congress or any pro-abortion decision passed by the Supreme Court. Mr. President, I'm not satisfied. How can the Commission not have a stand sa abortion when the Constitution that created their Commission is saying we are anti-abortion as a country? Para kang sundalo, tapos tinanong whether pwede ka ba punta sa gera, sabi mo, hindi ko pa alam ang stand ko sa gera. The Commission cannot say that they are bound by Section 12 of Article 2, which is, by the way, Mr. President, Article 2 is not a separate article on family, etc. It is the declaration and principles of state policies. This is a state policy. I will have a big problem if a commission under the Constitution has a different policy or different principle from that is declared the state policy. They're free to advocate it again if they leave the commission. But while they're in commission, they are like ambassadors. They are bound by the Philippine Constitution.
Yes, Mr. President. According to the commissioner, they are sworn to uphold the Constitution and all laws of the Republic of the Philippines, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Mr. Chair. But if that's the case, then why the concern about stating the position that you're pro-life? You know, when I was DFA secretary, the European Commission members of Parliament went to see me. They told me, "Sir, we are against death penalty." I did not tell them that personally, at that point in time, I was not for it. I became speaker, sa awa ng Diyos. I did not push it. No, I do not have a problem with death penalty in principle, but applying it in our judicial system, in our contemporary, may problema ako. But I was bound by the policy of our president then, who was pushing for death penalty. So what did I tell the European legislators? I told them, "Sir, ma'am, thank you for your concern, but the Universal Declaration of Human Rights protects life and is against arbitrary taking of life. But a judicial taking of life, a judicial process where there's a death penalty, hindi sakop ng hindi yan against the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Even the US, which is supposedly the bastion of human rights and the country of the free and the brave and the bastion of democracy, has states that have death penalty." And then ni-reverse ko. Sabi ko, how about the life of the unborn? In the Philippines, we are anti-abortion. In Europe, you are pro. So sinagot niya ako, don't women have a choice? Sabi ko, she has a choice not to have sex. She has a choice to have safe sex. She has a choice to have a baby. She has all the choices in the world. Di ba? But once there is a child in her, she has to consider the choice of the child. You know, there are countries na ang latest statistics nila is 1 out of 5 is aborted. Can you imagine a country where 20%, so row of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. No? Row of 9 yan, inuupuan nyo. When you look to your left and right, can you imagine that 2 of you in that row would not have been alive because you were aborted? Let me wrap up with this. No? This is in Psalms 139, 13 to 16. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that you are full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in a secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. If you look at Ephesians 1, ang pinaka-cited kasi sa Bible is yung kilala ka sa mother's womb. Pero when I came upon listening to this pastor who read this verse, nagulat din ako na meron pala nito. Praise be to God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us heavenly realms with every spiritual blessing in Christ. For He chose us in Him before the creation of the world to the holy and blameless in His sight. He chose us in Him before the creation of the world. So, if you ask me, my personal belief is the Bible. I don't believe life began at conception. I believe before the start of the world, alam na ng Diyos kung sino tayo. I believe alam ng Diyos yung sa womb. But I'm not imposing that on you. I'm not imposing that on the CHR. Brother Robin is here. I think the basis of his belief is the Quran. He's not imposing that on us. Kung meron atheist dito sa kwarto na to, you're my friend. I hope one day we'll be able to discuss. I want to know bakit ka atheist. I hope you want to know why I'm a Christian, di ba? But the Constitution already told us, life begins at conception. So wala nang debate doon. So when I was DFA Secretary, gustong-gusto kong mag-preach sana at sabihin, alam nyo, ganito. And I don't think God will take it against me na ginawa ko yung trabaho ko. Now, if they ask me my personal belief and it's a private setting and everything, why not? If I'm going to go to church on Sunday, I'm going to preach. If I'm invited. But officially, I am bound. So if the Senate passes a law here that says that this chair is God, I only have 2 choices. I resign. Well, 3 choices. I question it before the Supreme Court kasi unconstitutional yan. But assuming it's not unconstitutional, di ba? So, I do not believe that this Constitution is against the Bible. I don't think that interpreting scientifically that life begins in conception is against the Bible na kilala ka ng Diyos from the start. Why? Because it's 2 different things. When God actually created you and when scientifically nabuo ka na. So, Mr. President, just to put on record, meron kasing some kind of argument ngayon sa mga sobrang liberal na mga bansa na pag wala daw consciousness pa, pwede mo nang patayin pa. But the problem with that argument is that pagkatulog ka, wala ka rin consciousness. Pag you're in a coma, wala ka rin consciousness. Di ba? So if I hit someone in the head and he's unconscious at wala siyang consciousness at that time, if I kill him, hindi murder yon, no? So, I do want to be sensitive with those with unwanted pregnancies. There are so many cases now of teenage pregnancies. Our heart goes out, and we've tried in the Senate to do more to take out the stigma, for them to have prenatal care, for them to have counseling, all kinds of support, di ba? Single parenthood, grabe na yung mga batas natin. But as a nation, we come together to say we are against abortion. So sa akin, Mr. Chair, I'll leave it there. I had a chance, and I thank the chair, to have a 3 minutes tapos bumaba na. And actually, I was telling him nga na, and maybe I'd like to end with this. I was going to ask, but I'm conscious about the time of the good senator. I was going to ask, what's the one way that you can really push the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and yung contemporary Filipino values? And I was going to say, sa curriculum sa DepEd. Kasi it really starts at home, at church, at saka sa DepEd, no? Pero that's why I had to bring up abortion muna. Kasi baka ipupush ko sa inyo na dapat yung curriculum dumadaan din sa inyo, and then ilalagay nyo sa curriculum, right of choice, right of abortion, then para akong kumuha ng bato at iuntog ko sa ulo ko dito sa Senadong to. But Mr. Chairman, with those assurances that we will stick to the Constitution, we will protect life, from there, it is our duty as senators to make sure that the quality of life of every Filipino is the quality that the Almighty intended for them, which is always the best kind of quality. Thank you, Mr. Senate President. Thank you, CHR family. Ma'am, thank you for the clarification. No?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank His Honor Senator Alan Peter Cayetano for his enlightening words, and you have enriched not only the budget debates but also the discourse about abortion with what you have shared. Again, let me reiterate my stand against abortion, Mr. President. Mr. President, can I have a 1-minute
Yes, session
suspension?
suspended for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm supposed to be the next interpellator of the budget of the Commission on Human Rights, and it's just after conferring with the gentleman from Taguig, the sponsor of the budget, Senator Jingoy Estrada, and the Senate President himself, we kind of got lost, Mr. President, with the statements made a while ago by the Commission, as if there is no full position in as far as the Commission is concerned with regard to these matters. And in fact, Mr. President, parang nanganganak palalo ng maraming katanungan yung ating mga pag-iisip doon sa mga naging sagot at previous statements ng ating komisyon. And so, Mr. President, may I ask the good gentleman from San Juan sponsoring the measure, meron ba tayong nakukuhang foreign funding sa mga ganitong advokasya? For example, ito, pagsulong ng pro-abortion stance, Mr. President?
According to the chairperson, Richard Papalatok, they are receiving foreign funding, Mr. President,
Foreign funding.
but not for abortion.
Yes, Mr. President, but in other advocacies, am I correct, Mr. President?
What advocacy?
Is it contingent, Mr. President? For example, if they revoke their position, they change positions, depending on what they are advocating? Because
Well-
this is important.
Mr. President, they are receiving funding in all advocacies concerning human rights, Mr. President.
May we ask the Commission on Human Rights, if possible, to submit to us the list of the agencies, foreign agencies, funding these programs?
Yes, Mr. President, they are willing to submit the list of all agencies that are recipients of this foreign fund.
Dear colleague, I'm just curious. For example, the right to choice. Is there a funding for that advocacy, Mr. President? Which is also a human right.
There is no funding according to them, Mr. President.
Thank you. Well, Mr. President, I think this is just my point of view, Mr. President, after listening to the questions raised by our dear colleague. If the body will agree, I think the Commission should be given time to meet and come up with a position on this. Because it's very clear already. Imagine, Mr. President, if the Constitution is silent on this, we will be debating on it right now. But the Constitution is very clear. And if the Commission cannot come up with a position as a Commission and will no longer finger point, Mr. President, whatever commission that is, espousing this position to uphold or at least decriminalize abortion, then perhaps we should abort the deliberation of their budget, Mr. President, so that they would have time to meet up and come up with a solid position. Because we have been giving budget, Mr. President, for many years. And it's a good thing that our colleague, Senator Cayetano, raised this very important issue, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Yes, Senator Cayetano.
Just one input. Article 11 on accountability of public officers. The President, the Vice President, members of the Supreme Court, members of constitutional commissions, and the Ombudsman may be removed from office on impeachment for the conviction of culpable violation of the Constitution. Culpable violation of the Constitution. Then sa ibaba, all other public officers and employees may be removed from office as provided by law, but not by impeachment. It is very clear that even the highest public official, if you violate the Constitution, you may be removed. The Constitution does not even say we are okay with life. It says it will protect. So if the Commission cannot be proactive in saying we will protect the life of the unborn, ang hiningi ko nga lang sabihin anti-abortion eh. That is the very, very minimal in protecting the unborn. They should be having seminars, they should be having a curriculum, they should be espoused, they should be fighting members of parliament around the world who are espousing abortion, and that is the way to protect eh. Because if all the countries around you allow already, meron culture ano yan eh. Di ba? May clash of the cultures eh. So the CHR attends all of these conferences all around the world. They're not just there to listen. They're also there to espouse the Philippines' point of view. So in the same manner that I congratulate them na pinaglalaban nila yung rights of migrant workers, they should champion the rights of the unborn because it's in our Constitution. We're not forcing them to do so. It is just this the last statement, Mr. Majority Leader, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. It's their choice to be in the commission or not. So if they want to be in the commission, they have to protect the life of the unborn because that is the basis of their appointment under the Philippine Constitution. No? So let me leave it at that, Mr. President. But just to emphasize, di ba, that if we can remove a president, a Supreme Court justice, di ba, because of culpable violation of Constitution, how can we support the CHR if they're going to say pag-aaralan pa nila kung i-decriminalize o hindi yung abortion? I mean, nagpapalakpakan na yung right to choice nung lahat nung around the world nung sinabi yung statement na to eh, precisely because they think it's an opening to allowing abortion. So let me just keep on emphasizing protect, protect, protect. Nakalagay po doon sa Constitution, protect the life of the unborn. So hindi po nakalagay sa Constitution na meron ka lang right yung unborn. It is a directive. It is a proactive statement by the Philippine Constitution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, distinguished colleague.
Mr. President, if I may.
Yes.
I support the statement or the manifestation of our majority floor leader to defer the deliberation of the budget until otherwise this commission gives a stand with regard to abortion. If they continue to espouse the decriminalization of abortion or if they support abortion per se, I am sorry, I will be unable to defend this budget.
You're not the only one, Your Honor. I would not be able to approve the budget either. On this
Mr.
point.
President, we are 24 members here, and we belong to different religions. We have a Muslim here, we have Catholics here, we have Christians here, we have Protestants here. And I think all of us agree that all of us are against abortion. Mr. President, so I move that we defer first the deliberation of the budget of CHR until they come with a stand against abortion, a strong stand against abortion. And please, I suggest to the members of the commission not to pinpoint to the wag sisihin yung nakarang administrasyon with regard to their stand with regard to their stand on abortion, Mr. President. That is all, Mr. President.
And just for the record, we'd just like to remind the Commission on Human Rights that in the last administration, there was one budget cycle that you were stripped of your budget, zero budget. I remember that because my brother was a congressman who voted in favor of retaining your budget against the administration at the time, called me and said, kayo na bahala sa Senado na ibalik yung budget. You guys came to the Senate. The Senate was the one that restored your budget. I was majority floor leader then. We restored your budget and the rest is history. So nabalik yung budget po nyo. Na natanggal, na zero budget po kayo sa House of Representatives. Ang punto ko lang dyan is, this is not a Senate that's averse to the Commission on Human Rights. We support the Commission on Human Rights. But on this particular issue, we take it very strongly because I believe in the right of life. And I believe in life. And the life of an innocent child. Kaya ako ay sumasang-ayon sa ating chairperson ng subcommittee defending the budget na till we can come up with a clear statement from the Commission on Human Rights, we would like to be clarified, be illuminated with your position so that we can move further on the decision either to support or not to support your budget. Because this is a deliberative body, but it's also a political body. So with that, Majority Leader.
Before you act on the motion, Mr. President, may I just put into the records, we were looking at the August 17, 2022 Senate hearing. CHR, the same person, Executive Director Digia, said that the decriminalization of abortion is included in their priority agenda. Just wanted to put that on record. Mr. President, we took an oath to serve and protect our Constitution. And so, Mr. President, we are joining the sponsor himself who filed this motion to meantime suspend the deliberation of the budget of the Commission on Human Rights. I so move, Mr.
There
President.
being no objection to the motion, the budget of the Commission on Human Rights is deferred. Session suspended.